Welcome to the Hazard Class Podcast. This is the podcast where I ask my stupid questions to some of the smartest people in and around the world of emergency services. My guest this week is a fire captain who served the city of Sacramento, California for over 30 years. In the time since his retirement, he has become the sales director for HEN Nozzles, a company who is changing the game with their innovative and revolutionary nozzle designs. Today we'll talk about his career in the fire service and what he's up to now with my guest, Eric Guida. Eric, thank you for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
For sure. Yeah, I'm excited to pick your brain. Specifically, when I had Dennis on early on, one of the first episodes of the show, you were a person that he referenced as a very important and integral to his involvement with HEN. So super cool to have a chance to pick your brain now. So as is the beginning of the show, we always open the show with our wheel of stupid questions. It was just a reminder that asking questions is good. Even if they're stupid, if you point them at the right people, you can still get some pretty smart answers. So with that, we'll bounce into that segment and then we'll get on with the interview. How about that?
Sounds good.
Okay, so this is the debut of the new wheel. I had I don't know how many things are on there, 20 or so things. I've since retired them. Now that we're on episode in the 40s. So now this is all new questions. So we'll see what we get. It's a real wheel. Okay. So this one's actually fun because I did a little research about you. And prior to the fire service, you were maybe going to be a veterinarian. That's right?
That is correct.
Okay, so this is a perfect question for you, ironically. And boy, is it stupid. So imagine you had Dr. Dolittle type skills where you could speak to an animal. Which animal would you choose to speak to if you could only choose to speak to one type of animal?
Ooh. Well, so we had a Labrador retriever that we loved. And I think I would want to talk to him because he was the best dog we've ever had. And he was just so kind and nice as an animal. He never hurt a single thing. So I would love to be able to get into his mind and talk to him and see, what's going on, because he lived with us for like 10 plus years and he was a remarkable animal. So I would definitely want to talk to him and to all dogs if I have to go with one breed, because I think dogs are pretty amazing when it comes to, being there for us and helping us and just being around. So yeah, it would have to be a dog.
Yeah, I think that's probably a pretty fair guess. I just have a puppy. This month actually he turns 1, a Bernese mountain dog. He's like almost 90 pounds now. And, it would be interesting to get inside of his brain. Sometimes I don't think there's much going on in there. He's pretty dopey, which I love, but who knows? Maybe there's more to inside that brain than I just like to think it's like, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. That's what I imagine. His brain is like
food.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get into it. So I want to jump back to the very beginning, the origin story. So talk to me about like your childhood. What were some of your early influences and kind of how did you find your way into the fire service?
So I have no family members that are involved in the fire service at all. I was born in Montreal, Canada. My parents were basically French citizens that moved to Canada. And then before I was a year old, we moved to San Francisco. So I've pretty much lived my entire life in California, had no aspirations, anything about being a firefighter or anything like that. Early on, knew that I loved animals, so was headed towards veterinary school. Came up here, went to UC Davis, got my degree, but realized that I probably wasn't going to make it in the vet school. I didn't have the grades It's super competitive. It's actually more competitive than just regular doctors because there's so few vet schools across the country. And I didn't really have the grades. But being a firefighter was kind of always in the back of my mind, and I don't know why. I can remember growing up in LA. My parents had divorced, my mom had remarried, and we were growing up in Downey. And I remember being woken up one night to a firefighter basically carrying me out. And my parents had used the fireplace but didn't open the flue, so the house got filled with smoke.
Yeah.
So I remember being carried out and seeing all the lights and flashing of the engines and the trucks, and I was just like, wow, this is kind of cool. But it just never really, it never did anything more. And then when I got to school, there was like a student firefighter thing that you could do through the UC Davis Fire Department. And I had a friend join that, and I didn't, but I was like, wow, this is cool. I kind of always thought that you had to be like a superhero or something to be a firefighter. I didn't realize that it was just regular people that committed themselves in their life to this, to this calling. So, and then I graduated, and I signed up for this class run by Stanley Kaplan. It teaches you how to study for all the entrance board exams, the GREs, the LSATs, whatever. So I paid them like a bunch of money, like $400, which was a ton of money for me at the time. They gave me all my study materials, and they're like, hey, you're going to have to study pretty much 40 to 50 hours a week. And I'm like, I have a full-time job. I was a manager at a local restaurant. And they're like, yeah, you're going to have to cut way down. So I go back home, I grab a bottle of Ouzo, and I was living with my wife, but we weren't married at the time. And she comes home and she's like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, I don't want to be a veterinarian. I want to be a firefighter. And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I want to be a firefighter. And that's literally from that moment on, my manager at the restaurant knew the city of Davis fire chief, so she got some information for me. I opened a phone book, which we had back then, were phone books, and I just started calling every fire department until one was hiring for a sleeper program, which was Fair Oaks Fire Department. And they're, I thank them, they gave me my shot. I had no fire service experience whatsoever, but I had a college degree, and Chief Jesse Ross, I'm going to give you a shot. And I have to thank him for it because I worked with them for 4 years, and they got hired on in '92 with the city of Sacramento.
Wow. So it was a light switch moment for you, really?
It really was. It was just something that I kind of thought about maybe, but then I realized as much as I would have loved to have been a doctor, I think the fire service was the best choice. My dad didn't talk to me after that because he wanted me to be a doctor. And I'm sure my mom, was probably a little disappointed, but it is absolutely the best decision that I've ever made.
So then that first place you were working, that was volunteer or paid per call, or was it a full-time job?
It was paid call. Yeah. So I was an hourly employee, no benefits, nothing. It was like $6 an hour. And because we were basically cheap labor, we were the firefighters of that department. So it wasn't uncommon for me to work, 15, 20, 24-hour shifts because, we were the firefighters. And they even told us when I got hired, they're like, look, don't plan on getting hired here. This is a stepping stone. Use this to go somewhere else. I actually did get hired on there full time about a year before I went to the city. And so, yeah, I thank them for giving me the shot because, again, it was the best decision I've ever made. And it's the best career period that anybody, I think, can do.
So did you apply for any other departments before Sacramento?
So not before I got the paid call, but then while I was a paid call, I tested all over the state.
Okay. Across the country too, or just in California?
Just in California.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, I mean, we have enough departments back here, and
No kidding.
you know, that was back when you would show up and there'd be a line of 10,000 people for a job and all they're doing is establishing a list. They're not even promising to hire anybody. So it was pretty competitive before the whole paramedic surge.
Yeah. So at that point it was, well, and you could let me know, I don't even know, but is Sacramento transport service? Are they running ambulances? Is it just fireside, or what's the response model?
So when I got hired on, we were not transporting at the time, but the next class after me, which was about a year later, was the first paramedic class. That's when so in July of 94, we took over transporting in the city of Sacramento.
So then, for sake of reference, how large of a department was it then, and maybe how large is it now, if it's grown at all?
So since I came on, I think we've added 3 stations, at least 2. And we've grown because of all the paramedics. We've probably grown from 500-ish to almost 700.
Okay.
As far as personnel.
Is the staffing split? Do you have ambulance workers and then also firefighters? Are they doing dual role or splitting between the rigs, or how does the response work?
Well, since I retired, we actually started a single role where there are guys that are only on the ambulance. But before then, you got hired on as a paramedic, you would do 48 on the ambulance and then 48 on your engine or truck, and you would just toggle back and forth.
Interesting. So then tell me about that. Like, what was that like, kind of making the swap to the big city, going through that academy, kind of getting your boots on the ground in that firehouse? Like, what was the culture like at that point?
So Fair Oaks was a 3-station department. We didn't run a lot of calls. I think the most calls I had ever run in a day was 10 calls. And I thought that was incredible. And then, you know, I would talk to other friends that worked for the city of Sacramento. And at that time, Engine 6 was their busiest station, and they were running, I don't know, 15 calls a day. And I'm like, how do you get anything done when you're running 15 calls a day? I'm like, they must have people who cook for them and mow their lawns. And well, I quickly found out that's not the case.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was different. And my first day on probation at Engine 16, we had like 12 calls. And I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. And of course, 12 calls isn't a big deal, but it was definitely a culture change because Fair Oaks is a pretty nice community. We did a lot of customer service. We spent a lot of time with people on medical aids, make sure they were taken care of. Whereas in the city, we're running so many more calls that, you know, I think there's a little bit more turn and burn. But it was great. But I learned, one of the first captains I ever worked for, a guy named John DeGraff, who unfortunately passed away shortly after he retired, was like the first captain to instill in me being aggressive and safe at the same time, right? We can be aggressive, we can go in and get after it, we can put the fire out, but we can be safe about doing it. So we did a lot of training. He was a really phenomenal captain, and I'm just really lucky that I got to work with him as much as I did before I moved to the city. So
you worked just over 30 years, like about 31 years in Sacramento. What, in retrospect, what do you think was better when you retired, and what was better when you came on? What got worse? Is there anything?
The call volume definitely got worse.
Yeah.
I mean, and the resources that we had to deal with the call volume didn't go up at the same level. But I mean, when I came on, as a department, we were probably running 50 to 60,000 calls. And when I left, we were running over 110,000 calls.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, we had a lot of ambulance companies running, you know, over 5,000 and 6,000 calls a year. My engine company, Engine 6, we were running 5,000 calls a year. We had engine companies that were running more than that. The call volume definitely got worse, but that didn't necessarily translate to more fires, which, I mean, we don't ever wish anything bad on anyone, but if it's going to happen, we want it to happen on our shift so that
of course. Yes.
But I
what do you think improved?
Some of the things, I think our work schedule, we went to the 4896, which I think was a big plus. We had a different schedule before that, and it just one day off in between. To whereas the 4896, you're basically going home on a 4-day every single time. So that made it nice. And our equipment, we had a hodgepodge collection of fire engines. And then, probably 10 years after it came on, we went with Pierce solely. And I think that was a huge improvement. We got really good equipment, all the same. And that helped out.
Yeah, that's a thing that we're kind of dealing with on my department now is the lack of uniformity between the engines and some of the problems that causes in terms of, teaching deployment and hose loads and all the different things that come with a lack of uniformity. I would assume based on your statement that you think that that's a very important part of the fire service to try to make things uniform.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps, if you're running, you're running your engine a certain way and then, you either work overtime or you have a big incident where multiple engines are all together. You want to kind of know, for the most part, where everything is so that you're not doing you're not running all around opening a bunch of cabinets trying to find everything. I get that certain stations will have some things that are specialized, like our downtown stations will have some equipment, whereas our outlying stations may not have the same. And then we have the whole wildland contingent and all that. But yeah, I think for the most part, having everything kind of be the same, especially hose loads, should not be different. Nozzles should be the same. That way, especially for the younger generation, they don't have to worry about learning a multitude of different things. They can just learn one, and they know that wherever they go, that's going to be, the same.
So you spent half your time in the fire service in the back seat. And
Yes.
from kind of listening to some stuff you've done prior to this, you talked about your desire to promote being kind of driven by this desire to have more, teeth at the table, more ability to influence, the next generation and the decisions on a department. That said, like, at what point in someone's career does their voice start mattering? That's not to sound like the new people don't matter, but at what point in your career do you think that it's time to start speaking up and not just listening?
Ooh, that's a good question. A lot of us struggle with, the selfishness of staying in the back seat and having fun and being on the nozzle and not having to worry about anything and, yelling from the back seat, oh, let's go jump that call and all that, to moving to the front seat and having all that responsibility and making those decisions but making a bigger impact. Now, that's not to say that the senior firefighters in our department and across the country don't have an immense amount of value as far as teaching, because I think that should always be the go-to when you're brand new. I mean, yeah, you're officer, but go to that senior Jake, that first whip, talk to them, find out what the lay of the land is and how you run things, because they're going to know, they still have active roles and all that, whereas sometimes the officers start to get a little bit removed from it. But that being said, I think, unfortunately, the red helmet carries more weight when it comes to decision making for the whole department than the black helmet. And at least I saw that in Sacramento. we had a lot of firefighters with a lot of great ideas, but a lot of times those didn't carry as much until they came from either an officer or a battalion chief. And then it seemed like those carried a little bit more weight, which, I mean, it's good and bad. We don't need to hear every single idea that everybody has, right? So maybe that's a way of funneling it and, let the officer sort through what he thinks are the good ideas to bring forward. But I think as a fire service, we have to rely on the people underneath us as well as the people above us, right? Leadership from the bottom. I've always said, you can lead from the bottom. You can lead from the very first rung of that ladder just by being energetic and asking questions and doing all the work that some guys don't want to do. And eventually that energy, I think, is going to be contagious. And you're going to see some of those older guys go, well, shoot, he's doing it. And then they might be inclined to help out or maybe share something with you that, they didn't feel comfortable before. So I believe that we can lead from all rungs of the ladder. And I think we have to be open to taking, just because I'm an officer and you're a brand new firefighter doesn't mean I can't learn something from you, right? Mm-hmm. You're bringing something from maybe a department that you came from. Hey, Cap, can we try this? And then we try. I'm like, wow, that's actually way better than what we do. So I think being open to sharing your ideas and also getting ideas in, I think is, podcasts like this, where we are information, you can take the information that you like and you can discard whatever you don't like. But in the end, getting the information out there, I think, is the most important thing.
When you think back to your decision to, take that test and promote, was there any specific things at the time you were trying to move that you didn't feel like you had traction until you had that? Was there a specific catalyst in terms of like what you were trying to accomplish that you couldn't get done from the backseat?
No, I was in my career, I was in a position where I was kind of at a firehouse where I wanted to go somewhere else. And I was basically kind of told, well, you're going to need to promote to get out of that position. So I'm like, all right, it wasn't the best reason to promote, but in the end, it was, it was right for me. So there wasn't any catalyst. And honestly, part of me would have been happy to stay as a firefighter on a busy engine my whole career and just, having fun. But again, I think as you move up, you do that to the detriment of your own maybe happiness because you would rather fighter, but you move to captain. And I think even really good friends that are chiefs in Sacramento and all over, and I think they do that not because they want to be a chief, but because their department needs them to step up and lead. And, I have a lot of really good friends in Sacramento who are chiefs, not because they want to, but because I think they felt like the department needed them and they would much rather be on an engine or truck right now. I can guarantee it. But, they sacrifice their own enjoyment to help the department out. And I think that's pretty big.
Getting back to what you were saying before about people sharing information and learning from each other, there's this thing that I often run into when I teach or maybe discuss different ideas inside the fire service where people want like equality of ideas or equality of, plans. Do you think that that's real? Or do you think that there are definitively correct ways to do things and like there's not always 1,000 ways to skin a cat and not everyone's idea? It sounds harsh, maybe potentially, that you're saying, well, not everyone's idea is perfectly valid, but I'm sure you've been a part of meetings and discussions where people have these off the wall ideas and they want everything to be treated equally. When, especially as we move more and more into a fire service that's data driven and scientific, that we can say definitively this is better than that. It's not a matter of opinion anymore. How do you combat that in this world where everyone wants to have a valid opinion despite maybe not having the knowledge base?
Yeah. I mean, obviously you have to base what's good for you and your department based on your surroundings and all
Mhm.
that. But yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of discussions where basically, no, you're right, I'm wrong, or the other way around. And yeah, there are, I mean, I was an engine guy pretty much my whole career, and I have very strong opinions on the right way to apply water, to stretch hose lines, and they were the best based on my experience and what I know, right? And that doesn't mean it's best for everybody, but I think if we're open to evaluating different stuff and then seeing if it works for you and your department, I think that's more important than just stamping your feet and saying no, my way's the best and that's period. It's like, well, okay, maybe, but what about, and we're running into that with our nozzle. I truly believe, and I know we'll talk about this later, but I truly believe in my center of my chest that this is the best firefighting nozzle that's ever been made. And I know that's a huge statement, but all the fires that I've had, and I haven't had a million fires, but I've had enough to see. And we were a 7/8 smoothbore department in Sacramento. And in fact, I was part of the group that brought 7/8 so I was a staunch believer in the 7/8 smoothbore, but now there's something better. And I think we have to be open to at least evaluate it and see where, if I'm right or what you can find out about our nozzles that makes it, not a good fit for your department.
Mm-hmm. So going to that, your experience and what you've seen over the years, what are some things that you see that people consistently don't do as good as they could? Obviously, like everyone has these different opinions about hose deployment and stream application and all these things. If you could like shake the world and make some things change, what would the things that you'd like to see change inside engine company ops?
I think doing the small things and taking a minute to make sure everything is set up before you go inside, like getting your line down, stretching it out as best you can before you put water in it, checking everything, and then putting water in it, checking, everything, your pattern, all that, and just moving effectively. But we don't have to sprint on the fire ground, right? Taking a second to kind of take everything in and understand what's going on. And then when it's time to go, being aggressive, right? And moving in. I think sometimes we're a little hesitant, maybe because we haven't fought a lot of fires. So we tend to maybe be a little bit more cautious, but the fire's not waiting for us. So the quicker we can get in, we can apply water appropriately, and we can get the thing knocked down, the better it is for everybody, including the victims in there, the search team, and definitely, the nozzle team. So being aggressive, but not being so aggressive that we miss certain things. We don't want to pass fire. We want to make sure that when we apply water, we apply it correctly, and we're not just applying it just because it makes it, easy on us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you take your promotional test. Now you're a captain. If you could go back after the 15 years you spent as a captain and talk to that captain who just became one, what would you tell him to make that next 15 years smoother, better, more efficient, more effective? What did you learn about being a captain over those years?
I would tell them that the world will slow down eventually, because I remember being a brand new captain, everything was moving so fast and I was just trying to catch up, and I never felt like everybody that would arrive on scene already knew what was going on and I had no idea, and the whole world was flying by me. I would tell them, you know what? It will slow down eventually. You will catch up and you will get your own style. It takes a while to get your style, to get your rhythm. You know, whether it's how you put your stuff on the rig, how you get your stuff situated around where you sit, how you operate, you know, the radio or the computer terminal. That all takes time. That all takes rhythm. And it's something that you also have to practice, right? You have to continually practice and look for ways to improve. And I changed my stuff up all the time until I had what I thought was the final version, and then I would learn something from somebody, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll change it. So being open to change it too. But yeah, I would just tell myself to relax. You'll get it. Every brand new officer is nervous. They don't want to make a mistake. They obviously don't want to get anybody hurt. But we all feel like that, and it's just, you know what? It's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. You got your bugles because your organization felt like you were ready. So as long as you remember that you're ready, you'll be okay.
How do you, if you go back to, you know, other motivations beyond just like a desire to have a better seat at the table, how would you say a senior firefighter should know they're ready to promote? Like, what are the tangible skills they have that say you're ready for the next step?
I think you're ready to take the next step when you're actively engaged in helping the younger people. Like you're not just waiting for them to come to you, but you're actively creating ways to help them get better. You're involved in committees that are already trying to help your fire department get better, whether it's engine committees or, you know, whatever committees, a PPE committee. I think that's a really good sign that, you know, you're ready. I think another thing is if you're actively in the training division, whether you're a drill instructor or you're on a bunch of different cadres, that's a really good sign that, you know what, you're ready. And I think just anybody who's just not sitting in the recliner 24/7 on their phones is probably somebody that is actively looking to get better. And if they're looking to get better, then they probably should be looking to make their department better. And I think if we have those seasoned firefighters that are willing to take that next step, I think it's going to improve the department, because now they have a much better chance of influencing more people based on their interactions.
Mm-hmm. So one thing I encounter all the time in teaching, and I'm interested to get your take on, is how do we combat the pride in the fire service, or maybe a better term would be like the lack of humbleness in admitting what we do or don't know. And I feel like this is especially prevalent early on in people's careers when they're still a little unsure. They come out of the academy, they want to feel like they got it, right? We maybe have a little bit of that false confidence. And because of that, they come into these stations and they don't want to say, oh, I don't know how to do that, because they don't want to look dumb. But then in that process, they lose the greatest opportunity to ask all the questions when the stakes are low and everyone expects them to not know things. And then all of a sudden they become a 10-year guy that's still asking 1-year questions, or never asks the questions and never knows, and always, you know, remains in that perpetual first year forever. So like, in your experience, how do we combat that? It seems like one of the hardest things to do is to tell people it's okay to not know. You just need to ask. We're happy to help. But if you are too prideful to admit that, you're going to never be able to progress. How do we deal with that?
So I think a lot of that is the culture of our fire departments, our fire stations, right? I think I always tried to make sure that you know, the firefighters that worked for me, we were always welcoming, right? I mean, we would rib the new people, of course, but we try to always make it, hey, we're here for you. You have 1 year to get everything ready to go, because after probation, you're on your own. So spend this time with us, ask as many questions as possible. We will help you as much as possible. I think if the culture of the fire department, the fire station is welcoming to that, and we cut down on all the hazing and just because, you know, you were treated like crap when you were probie, now you're gonna do the same. I think that is so disruptive to the culture that you're talking about of making it okay to ask questions, right? And then if they end up making a mistake and they didn't ask a question, then you correct it there. Like, okay, well, why didn't you ask a question? Well, I didn't want to look stupid. And then, okay, you correct it right there and go, look, you look a lot stupider now by making the mistake when you knew you didn't know what you were doing versus just saying, hey, you know, I need some help. So I think that comes from us, not so much the recruit, but I think that comes from us making sure that they understand that it's okay to fail. In fact, you should fail in front of us when we're out training, because we can correct it, and it's very safe to fail with us. When we're out on the fire ground and I can't watch every move you make, fail with us, we'll fix it, we'll get you comfortable, and then, you know, what happens, happens.
Yeah, I had a captain in the past that used to say, like, everyone has a certain amount of failures per repetition. Like, so like if you're going to deploy a line 1,000 times wrong in your career, the more times that happens in training, the better it is. So it's less likely that it's going to happen in the field. And that really resonated with me, with this idea that, well, you're going to fail to force the door perfectly, 500 times in your career. If you do most of those in the bay, that's a good place to have them happen. And so when you think about that culture, where does that culture come from? I've heard two sides of the debates, that culture is top down, like from the chief downwards, and then also that it's, from firefighter up, maybe be that senior firefighter up. Where do you think that is? Or is it kind of everyone's responsibility in different ways?
I think it can actually be both. I've worked for some amazing chiefs who set the standard of what they wanted to see. And as officers, we want to make our battalion chiefs happy, right? We want to make them proud. So when you show up on a multi-company event, you want them searching you out to go and do the tough job, right? So you don't get that by not failing and then recovering. So I think it does start from the top down, but I also think, like I said before, it starts on all levels, right? I think we had a lot of hiring going on. So we had, a person right off of probation and a person that just started probation working side by side. And that 1 year firefighter can do a lot to ease the anxiety of the brand new firefighter, basically saying, look, I was literally just sitting where you were sitting, 8 months ago, and you're going to be okay. And if you need any help, right? So that's like bottom rung, helping each other. And then the senior firefighter can also be there to help out and go, look, everybody's been where you've been. You're going to be okay. And I think that can just filter all the way from that bottom rung all the way up to the top. And then, if your battalion chiefs have set an expectation of that you can follow and understand, then it makes it pretty easy for the officers to hold the line and just make sure that everybody is accountable, but we're not putting any undue stress on people just because, we want to be jerks.
So as you worked through your time and then you eventually approached retirement, what was that period like? Like, what was it like having to kind of pick a day and know that it was going to be over? What was that experience like for a guy that was fully invested in the job for that long?
Well, I can tell you that I wasn't necessarily looking forward to retirement. I loved what I did. I loved where I worked. I really wasn't looking to retire, but it was just my time. I had maxed out. I had done 30 years with the city. My wife was ready for something different. And, kind of factored all those things in. I mean, if I could go back right now and go back to engine 6, I would, but that we all have to move on. So, preparing yourself, no one ever tells you, or at least they didn't tell me, how much you're going to miss the job when you walk away. Because I retired from engine 6, and then the next day I'm nobody. I mean, you're not a firefighter anymore. You're a retired firefighter, and that's a different, that's a whole different standard. And I remember a very good friend of mine who was one of my biggest mentors, pretty much set me down the right path. The guy, my captain, Tim Adams, he retired a couple of years before me, and I'm like, hey, I was still working. I'm like, hey, come by Sixes, have lunch. He's like, yeah, okay, and he never did. And I'm like, oh, that, why would you come by? Now I understand, right? Once you retire, it's really hard to go back to the place where you worked and feel like you're a part of it. It's kind of like the college kid who goes back to his hometown and goes to the high school parties, right? You're just, you're out of place, and it's a different feeling. So yeah, I mean, I wasn't looking forward to retirement, but I understood that it was time. And then again, this whole HEN thing just kind of fell into my lap 7 days after I retired. And I'm so thankful that it did, because I would have been missing the job really, really badly. And now I get to, travel all over and talk to firefighters and flow some water. And it's been really, really nice.
So I do want to talk about HEN, but I have 2 more questions for you, just for the man behind all of this, right? You've been married. You said you were with your wife from like the very, how long have you been married now?
37 years.
37 years. Congrats. For a relatively young fireman like me, I just turned 33, and I've been married for 10 years. Obviously in the fire service, marriage is a really hard thing, being away as long as you are. What's your advice to other firemen to how to make it work this long?
Having understanding that, especially when you start having children, that your hardest day at work is probably going to be better than most of the days that they have at home with little kids and no help. It's really, really hard to raise children by yourself when you're gone, when your husband or your wife or your significant other are gone for 24, 48, 72 hours. So just understanding and being present when you're home and being active in everything that you can be active with and helping and, changing diapers and all that kind of stuff. Because when you're gone, your significant other has 100% of that duty. And you're at work and you're having a great time and you're going on fires, or you're playing pickleball, or you're working out or watching TV or whatever. And, your significant other is at home, and it's not like, I don't think they hate it, but it's hard work raising kids by yourself. So having empathy, I think, goes a long way into understanding what they're going through. And then, you're always going to be looked upon as the hero or the person that goes to work and saves lives, and all they're doing is they're home raising kids. Well, that's pretty important. Making sure that, you raise, good human beings. That doesn't just happen. So I think that, at least for me in my marriage, I tried really hard to understand what she was going through. And I wasn't perfect. And I would add things to my schedule that weren't work related, that took me away from them. But just understanding that, it's hard being at home and raising kids by yourself and, not having your husband. And anytime anything bad happened, I was always at work. I mean, that's
I
just
know that.
right.
Yeah.
That's just the way things are. So, kind of understanding that. And I think the whole world, I think, just empathy, just being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and understanding what they're going through, and being sympathetic to that, I think helps out, not just in marriage, but I think just in human life.
Mm-hmm. For sure. That's good advice. So then I want to hit one more thing on you leaving the job. So when you think about missing the job, when you think about like, maybe longing to go back in some ways, what is it specifically about it? Is there a certain thing about the job that you long for still, or you haven't found a substitute for?
I loved running calls. I loved going out the door. Station 6 is on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. And I always said that there's nothing like flying down MLK on Engine 6. Yes, most of them were medical aids and most of them were BS medical aids, but a lot of times they weren't. And then pulling out on the apron and seeing a big column, there's just nothing that compares to that to me. And I will miss that forever.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I know that feeling. Okay. So now I want to talk life post-fire service. So you said just a few days after you retired formally, you get picked up by HEN. What is your origin story with that? What is the origin story of HEN in general? How did you get brought on?
So, my going away breakfast, my retirement breakfast was a super spreader event, right? So this was December of 21. COVID was still rampant, and my going away breakfast was a super spreader event. 25 of us got COVID right at Christmas. So I'm at home. I'm in quarantine in my bedroom, and I get this LinkedIn request. And I don't do a lot of social media, but I did have LinkedIn. And my boss, Sonny, reaches out to me and goes, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you about a nozzle I'm developing. I got your contact from Eric Sailors, who was a battalion chief in Sacramento at the time. He's now since the fire chief of El Cerrito." So I reached out to Eric. I'm like, "Hey, is this legit?" He goes, "Yeah, I think the two of you would really hit it off." So I called up my boss, Sonny, and he explained to me what he was working on. So I met with him, and we went and we flowed the nozzle at one of the Sacramento Firehouses, and it was a 3D printed plastic version. And of course we broke it, but before we did, I saw that bladed pattern, and I was like, wow. I'm like, I think that's something. But I did tell him, I go, "Look, Eric Guida is not going to sell nozzles nationwide." I go, "We need to get Dennis Laguerre, we need to get Ray McCormack, and we need to get Dave McGrail." I go, "If we can get those three to give us a thumbs up," and I never envisioned that they would come on and be advisors. I just wanted a thumbs up, like, yeah, this makes sense. I got two of the three. I love Dave. Dave and I go way back. I haven't got Dave McGrail yet, but Ray's an advisor, Dennis is an advisor, and to me, if I'm a follower of the fire service and I see those two names backing a product, that holds a lot of clout for me, and I know it does, for the fire service. So, especially since Ray has never endorsed a product before ever. So, I think that speaks a lot to where we're at and hopefully where we're going.
Mm-hmm. So at that point, how long had HEN existed? At the point in bringing you on, how long had they been working to get up to that 3D printed prototype?
So I was the second employee hired. So it was just my boss, Sonny, and one engineer, and they were working on everything. And I think I got hired in January of 21, and I think the other engineer got hired in October of 20. So wow. Not very long. My boss, Sonny, had already gone to CAL FIRE and had explained everything. And he actually had created a non-adjustable bladed smoothbore. It looked like a vacuum attachment.
Okay.
And he took it to them. He floated for them, and they're like, "Yep, that's what we want, but we have to be able to adjust it back to a tight stream as well." And that was the challenge. And so he brought me on shortly after that, and I've been with him now. Almost it'll be 4 years in January, so over 3.5 years, and it's been a great wild ride. And I think where we're headed is really good for the fire service, honestly.
So obviously that bladed pattern is like kind of the huge innovation. Obviously the ability to make an adjustable smoothbore is revolutionary in and of itself, but the fact that it's not like a cone pattern, like it has always been, when you think about a fog pattern, now it's this blade. Have they ever explained to you what the advent of that was? What was going on? Was someone messing with a hose with their thumb, or how did they go, what about a blade? How did that come about?
Well, I think, and I'm only guessing here, but I think my boss's idea was to take the best attributes of a combination nozzle and a smoothbore and bring it into one. So basically a smoothbore that has a wider pattern. And I think he's got a PhD in polymer physics, so he's super, super smart.
Yeah.
So he basically came up with the geometrical that, square and rectangular are easier to manipulate than a circle. And I think that was the initial basis. And then when we started messing around, he realized that it was easier to create the bladed pattern and keep it consistent versus any other shape. And because when you widen things, you also have to narrow them, or you don't get the stream, you lose pressure. And so there's a lot of math and engineering that went into it. And I think he realized that the square and or rectangular shape lended itself to being able to create a pattern that you can alternate versus the circle.
And I have tested the HEN nozzle before for my department, and obviously it was awesome. And when Dennis was on the podcast in the past, the one thing that I couldn't believe when we first got our hands on it was like the fit and finish was unlike any other nozzle I'd ever handled. Right? It just felt like the same way. I think in that episode I described it as the way it feels when you open like the door of a luxury car, and it just like feels different than the old cheap sedan or whatever.
Right.
Being the fact that you were there, going from 3D printed prototype to the final fit and finish product, what were those decisions like, as far as, because there has to be some extra cost in having it be that precise and feel so good. What were those conversations and decisions like to make it that way? It obviously had to have been a purposeful decision to make it stand apart in that, category.
For sure. Well, one of the earliest conversations I had with my boss is like, look, there's a certain vanity that comes into the fire service, right? We need things to actually look good. And I hate to say it, but we do. So what it does, but if it looks silly, people aren't going to buy it, right? And it had to be small. It had to be compact. And a lot of the decisions on the fit and finish, came from him and his background, and, the anodized aluminum and the lightweight. But there have been a lot of steps to get there. We've had a lot of other nozzles that we've developed, and the design just keeps getting improved to the point now where I think we're pretty much at the final version. I mean, the shutoff is bomb-proof and looks amazing, and the blades are they look great, they feel great, they're lightweight, they're not overly big, they're pretty much smaller than any other combination nozzle out there. They fit in a single wide hose tray, but there's been a lot of engineering work that's gone into that.
And now you've moved. I think most recently I saw you released a master stream configuration, a bladed master stream. That's right. Is that the newest product to be launched?
That is. So we just released our Titan series, which is our master streams. It's 500, 750, and 1,000-gallon bladed pattern, which it's pretty impressive to see 1,000 gallons a minute blade. I mean, the coverage is immense. Right now, we have the tips available, but we're also, hopefully by the end of the year, we have the entire unit. So that you can, if you buy a new engine and you want one of our deck guns, which is remote control, you'll be able to have that. Or if you have a brush truck that has a bumper mounted, master stream with a smaller, 45 GPM nozzle on it that you want to be able to control from the cab, we'll have that also.
Wow.
So it's exciting. We want to take care of the fire service all the way as far as we can, because we want, again, I think our nozzles make the fire service safer. So if in 5 or 10 years, we have a good amount of nozzles out there and guys aren't blistering their ears and burning their hands as they're pushing down hallways because the bladed pattern is protecting them, then I think I've given a little back to the fire service that, I loved for 35 years.
Mm-hmm. So now you have the full cache from, 1 3/4 lines, even down to forestry lines, all the way up to master streams. Where does Henn go from here? Is it just a matter of getting them into people's hands, or is there new things coming down the pipeline, probably stuff that you can't even talk to me about? But what's going on? What's the future of Henn?
Yeah, we have some really exciting things, and you're right, I can't really talk about them right now, but we're working on basically taking care of everything from the pump panel to the fire, and everything in between. So we do have some really exciting things coming out, but I think right now, we have to focus on what we have out there right now, because there's 4 nozzle companies basically out there, and we're still number 4. So we have a lot of work to do. Getting nozzles into firefighters' hands so they can flow them, I think, is the most important thing for us to do right now, because there's no amount of videos or endorsements or even podcasts that we can do that will convince departments to buy them without flowing them. So that's why we've expanded our sales force tremendously. And we're just working hard to get out there, let people flow their nozzles, and then decide, for themselves.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm going to let you go, but I do appreciate your wisdom, your knowledge, and telling us a little bit more about what you're doing now. And I'm excited to see what Henn has for us in the future.
Well, I appreciate being on here. I'm honored to have been asked, and no, thank you. I had a great time.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric.